In this video, we're going to be answering the essential question, what are ratios and proportions? What are ratios and proportions? Let's go ahead and define or write a definition for a ratio. A ratio is a fraction that expresses the relationship between two numbers. So you can see, class, that a ratio is really just a fraction. In fact, you can use those two words interchangeably. But there's different ways to write ratios compared to fractions. So if we had the sentence that said the ratio of A to B, you can also write this as A colon B, A to B. And it can also be written, again, as a fraction, just like we talked about. A ratio can be written as a fraction. This would be A over B. The thing you want to get from this is that the first number that you see is going to be on top of the fraction or in front of the colon. And the second number, the number after the word 2, is going to be after the colon or in the denominator of the fraction. So let's take a look. If you had a question that said, hey, the ratio of something is, and they wrote 1 colon 3, that's 1 to 3 is the ratio. You can also write this, of course. You can convert it to a fraction, 1 over 3. Notice the first number on top, second number on bottom. And you could also write it as, and I'll put this in quotes, or you could say it as 1, 2, 3. So this is the ratio of 1 to 3, or 1 over 3. Now, when we're simplifying ratios, it's the same as simplifying a fraction, except for sometimes we run into situations where you have a unit of measure that's different on the top of the fraction than it is on the bottom of the fraction. If you had a fraction that was 6 feet over 18 feet, then you could just say, oh, well, 6 feet over 18 feet is just 6 over 18. We can divide top and bottom by 6, and you get 1/3, and that would be your simplified ratio. But in this case, we don't have feet on top and bottom. We've got two different units of measure on top and bottom. So students will struggle with this. I hope you're listening to this audio to get rid of this or to change this to a simplified ratio, which means a ratio that not only has the smallest numbers in it, like simplifying a fraction, but you also get rid of the units of measure. So it's just going to look like a fraction. And the way you do this is we're going to use the math principle that we know about multiplying by 1. When you multiply something by 1, you know it doesn't change the final value of the answer. You multiply 6 times 1, that's 6. You multiply 1/6 times 1, it's just 1/6. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out, is there a fraction that we can multiply this ratio by so that I can get feet and inches to cancel each other, and so we can just end up with a ratio without the unit of measure. And certainly there is. All we got to do is figure out a fraction that equals 1 that's going to get rid of these two units of measure. Now before you do this, you're going to have to know what is the relationship between inches and feet. So right here in the top in the EQ, will you please write the sentence, so that math sentence, 1 foot equals 12 inches. Again, I'll say it again. 1 foot equals 12 inches. Now, if you know that 1 foot equals 12 inches, then here's what we can do. I'll show you this trick. If we have feet on top in our original ratio, I'm going to put feet on bottom in our multiplier here, because I want to be able to cancel out feet. You know that if you have the same number on top and bottom of a fraction, you can cancel it out and change it to 1. And I want to put inches on top because I want to be able to put inches on top and bottom, and I want to cancel inches. All we have to do now is put in two numbers that make the top and bottom of this fraction equal. And here's those numbers. We had just talked about this. 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. And because 12 inches is the same measure as 1 foot, this fraction has the same value on top and bottom, and that means it equals 1. So we can actually multiply our original ratio by this new multiplying fraction, and we can change it so that the units disappear, and we're not changing our final value of our answer because we're just multiplying our original ratio by 1. But think about this now. If feet are on top and feet are on bottom, we can cancel that. And if inches are on top and inches are on bottom, we can cancel that. And now we basically can just multiply the numbers because the units are gone. 6 times 12 is 72. 18 times 1 is 18. And if I check with your calculator, you're going to find out that actually 18 goes into 72. That means we can divide the top and the bottom of this fraction by 18. 72 divided by 18 is 4. 18 divided by 18 is 1. And here is our final simplified ratio. So the actual ratio of 6 feet over 18 inches is actually 4 to 1. It's not 1 to 3 like we first thought in the beginning. And that's because we had different units of measure. We got rid of those units of measure by creating a fraction that was equal to 1. And then we went ahead and multiplied numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and then we simplified that fraction to get our final ratio. So I hope that makes sense to you, how we simplify ratios with different units of measure. Okay, let's take a look at the second part of our video. What is a proportion? Proportion is an equation which tells us that two ratios are equal. That two ratios are equal. And here's an example of that under this title cross product property. You're going to go ahead and write this equation. Take a look at this first part. A over B equals C over D. That's a proportion. An equation which tells us that this ratio is equal to this ratio. And here's something mathematically I want to show you. It's pretty easy to solve or simplify a proportion because we can use what's called the cross product property. You can actually say, you know what, I can move the D over to this side and multiply it by the A, and I can move the B over to this side and multiply it by the C. Now, I can show you with Algebra 1 how we can actually do that, but for now, I just want you to understand that property. So the proportion A over B equals C over D can be rewritten as A times D equals B times C, which makes it easier to solve. Let's take an example of that. You guys will see how this works. Here's the question. In this proportion, solve for x. I've got a ratio equals a ratio. That's a proportion. We're going to multiply 2 times 25. And that's going to end up being equal to 5 times x. All right, let's go ahead and simplify this. 2 times 25 is 50. 50 equals 5x. And I want to get x by itself because that's what I want to solve for. So I'm going to divide the right side by 5, which means I'm going to divide the left side by 5. And you end up with x equals 50 divided by 5 is 10. So there's our final answer, x equals 10. And we're able to do that pretty easily by using the cross product property. So there's your introduction to ratios and proportions.